I want to talk a little bit about how we can ride a sitting trot that's a little bit more finely tuned, and that when we ride it correctly can become such a wonderful basis for a lot of other exercises that we want to ride and patterns. But basically, I think when it comes to a really good fundamental seat in the sitting trot that benefits the rider as well as the horse, the horse in the first place, of course, we have to overcome one of our human sort of reflexes in terms of how we respond to certain stimuli. And what I mean by that is that when we sit on a horse and the horse is in the walk, we can be all relaxed and balanced and tuned in. And then as soon as the horse starts trotting, our instinct as a human makes us want to hold on. And holding on means with whatever we have. And it might not be like a conscious gripping and all that, but it might just be enough to inhibit the horse in the way the horses in the way they feel when we're sitting on them, when they are meant to go forward. And so what I mean by that, by holding on, means number one, first instinct would be gripping too tightly with our knees. And then when we grip too much with the knees, usually the whole upper leg gets pulled up a little bit. And then the second part of that would be that we're losing one or both stirrups. That's just worst case scenario, but it could always happen. So the first part we need to do is relax our legs and figure out a way of dosing the holds that we want to have on our horses with our seat. And the second part is with our hands. Instinctually, as humans, we are used to fixing a lot of things in our lives with our hands. And again, it's not an intentional thing a lot of times, but the hands themselves become sometimes, the fingers close a little bit tighter around the reins and the hands become a little bit more rigid just because we're in a faster speed of movement. And so another part is that our shoulders may get tense. And so rolling back your shoulders while you're in the sitting trot is always a really nice idea, or before, just to get rid of tension that may have built up there in that area. And so I want to talk a little bit about this term that in the German language is called Knieschluss. And Knieschluss means knee closure. And it's very rarely heard about when I listen to people in the English-speaking community. So I want to talk about that a little bit. Knee closure is the part, obviously, where you're using your knees to close in on the horse, meaning you push in and you have a feeling of, safety at first, perhaps subconsciously, but ultimately a lot of people use it as a balancing tool to stay in the saddle. And I think we just need to think of it more as a rhythmic instrument rather than a one, clenching and holding type of movement. And so what I want you to do for a moment here is to just come to a halt on your horse and just sit there relaxed, and then just for a moment put all the knee pressure, like 100% of however strong you are, put that much knee pressure onto your horse so that your horse is feeling that pressure. And then slowly release until you have zero pressure. So, and then I want you to think, how much of pressure percentages are you using at any given moment while you're riding? And so the reason that's important is that when you go into a sitting trot into a gait that has a suspension phase, is that a little bit of gripping is fine, but not too much, or it will cause the horse to slow down, because those are the slow down buttons, the inhibiting buttons that you can make use of when you want to purposefully half halt your horse. But then the driving part, the lower legs that are sort of these rhythm makers, the metronomic rhythm makers in this equation of riding, you can only be in conscious and purposeful, useful. They can only be useful to you in that rhythmic way that when you have a little bit of pressure in your knees, put a little bit, let's say 25% of pressure into your knees. Now you have the liberty of using your lower leg forward, here in neutral, and here in slowing down mode, but also rhythmically on and off in smaller vibrations or a little bit larger, whatever you need to do. But the reason that's important in the sitting trot is that you have to have that knee closure, let's say 25%, just roundabout. It's different for different horses. But in order to be able to control how much input you give in the pulsating way when you're riding the trot, and how little and how much you want to drive, quote unquote, your horse. So that's something I'm going to show you in motion in a moment. The second part is keeping your heels down when you have knee closure. Think almost as if you have a lead ball or a weighted piece of lead in your heel, so that your heels just naturally sink downward. And then as you're coming up into the upper part of your body in your seat, pay attention to your weight that you put in your seat bones. Sometimes inadvertently we may put a little bit more weight in one or the other. And when you feel that your horse might swerve or, come over with his or her haunches to the left or to the right, that may have to do with the fact that you may sit on one side of your seat bones a little bit too heavy. So if you feel the horse coming over to the left with the haunches, that's a sign that you might sit a little bit too heavy to the left or to the right. Next thing, I want to talk about the psoas muscles. Those are the actual balancing tools that we use when we're in the sitting trot. And the psoas muscles are these big muscle strands that are attached to the inside of our vertebrae. Then they go through our pelvic area, and then they attach to the femur on each side. And these internal muscle strands, they actually help us ultimately get in touch with our balancing abilities. And those are the ones that we want to engage in the sitting trot. And in order to be successful with that, is we can not hold the reins too tight, because otherwise you're starting to engage different types of muscles, and we don't want that. We want to teach you correctly wherever you are on the journey with your horse. So I'm going to just, after all this talk, finally go into a little bit of sitting trot. I'm just going to go in and out for a few steps, breathing in into the up transition, cupping my leg with the lower legs, and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No more than 8 up to 10 steps in the beginning when you do these walk-trot transitions, just after your walk warm-up. And I'll do it again. Breathe in. And all I'm going to do is focus on my knee pressure and my lower legs coming on, every stride of the trot. Right? Then we're going back to walk. And then we're going to go back to sitting trot here, just for a few steps. Breathe out. Lower legs can go back a little bit in the down transition, and the knee pressure can increase a little bit if that's helpful for you. The horse always looks for direction. Here's again up transition from our knees and from our lower legs and from our weight. And so here is all of that. It was a little bit longer than I had planned. It's okay. So once you do these little mini transitions, then you're going to go into posting trot. Alternating posting and sitting trot is sort of the next really nice tool that you can use to just train yourself. You can almost think of this as a lunge line mini lesson that you give yourself. And you're just going to go posting trot on a circle, and then you're going to sit for a few steps, and you're going to post again. And I want you to pay attention to your seat bones. Are they evenly weighted? Your knee pressure. How much knee pressure do you need so that the horse can still feel that he or she can move forward freely, but so that you at the same time, when you're sitting, can go bump, 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 bump with your lower legs then give your horse enough impulse that it knows this is the rhythm for this type of trot that we're riding right now. And that's really the beginning of it. You can expand on this then. I'll show you. We're going to go straight here. And then we're going to ride a little bit of a sitting trot, like a small circle here, 10 meters approximately, or less, or more, whatever. It's not that important. We post again, come around, and then we're going to go into the next 10-meter circle. Inside shoulder goes back. Knee pressure is on, not too much. I want to say right now what I have is maybe 30%. Then I post again. In the posting trot, I have a different, I'm going to do another circle here. Here. So you make maybe 3 or 4 consecutive sitting trot circles like this. You go around the whole arena. You know, you can space them out a little bit. And then, there we go, another one. Right here. And then I'm going to start just to go straight and post for a while. And I want to talk a little bit about posting trot. That also will help you with your awareness and your balance on the horse. I'm going to come across here and change directions in a moment. But posting trot is also one of those things where people have a hard time knowing how to use their legs. And again, I'm going to always say, think about as if you're posting 50% from your knee and 50% from the pressure you're putting into your stirrup. And what that does is you're going to automatically use that energy, the knee closure energy, to, raise yourself up while you're not just and then you're going to use a little bit of your stirrup to help you up that way too. But it's not only from the stirrup, right? And that way your horse doesn't feel such a big disconnection between sitting trot and posting trot. And you can then, enjoy both types of trotting with your horse with a certain measure of continuity. And then I'm going to go into a little bit of a stretchy trot here, just to finish this off, to round it up, this little segment. And, so much for all of that. Then I'm going to sit the trot to go into the walk. Use again a little bit of knee pressure in my down transition. And so much talk for all about the sitting trot. Hope this helps you. Hope you stay tuned. And thank you for watching.